All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We actually have a pretty full house today. So as you see people come in, or if you have friends that you're kind of saving seats for, please encourage them to sit here in the front row where that always seems to be the place. Which kind of makes me a little sad on the inside, by the way, when you come in early and you're like, can we sit in the, like, how far back can we sit? But appreciate you being here. We are being recorded today, so when we do go to do share outs and that sort of thing, we'll kind of have a couple of microphones that we'll be carrying around and going around town, if you will. We're really excited of having a joint math and science coordinator meeting today, and I'm super excited to introduce myself as well as my team, and then also all the great people that we work with here at the State Board of Education, and then to go around and do a quick intro of who we are, because it's not every day that all of the state math and science coordinators get to come together and hang out. So I'm Jolie Honey, and I'm the STEM coordinator, and then I'm also 612 mathematics here at the State Board of Education. And also we'll go with Ricky.
Hi, I'm Ricky Scott. There are some people online, just we checked and they're there. Hi, world. I'm on TV. I'm Ricky Scott. I'm the science specialist for the Utah State Board of Education.
I'm Scott Ross-Kelly. I'm the science assessment specialist for the State Board of Education.
I'm Whitney Barlow. I'm the math assessment specialist for the State Board of Education.
I'm Shannon Ferentz, and I'm the elementary math specialist for the State Board of Education.
And I'm Becky Unker. I'm the special ed math specialist.
Great. Awesome. And one of the things that we love that we have going on is that we create different opportunities and ways for us to connect with each other and work together. Becky works with us really closely. We work together on the CDIP project, or the State Systemic Improvement Plan, that we often talk about in this meeting and with us as math people. I am not sure, are you guys with the people online, or are we ready to go to the next? Okay, great. And I know Ricky has already also shared, for people who are just coming in, that we have a location on the bottom of the PowerPoint. You'll see where you can go into a Google Doc where you can, oh, look at that. Ricky's here, Shannon, Rebecca, Chantel. People are putting in information and who they are and who's here. So join in the fun. We're going to have a great day. And look, Jolie's even putting her information in as we speak. So there's that. Which is this. And so here we go. So today, you guys, we have a good morning plan for you. We are also really excited, because this doesn't happen to us all the time, but we're really excited that the STEM Action Center has been able to provide us with lunch today. So we have lunch, which I know doesn't happen all the time anymore. But then the other exciting part about that is when we come back, the afternoon is going to be a hot topic session. So there will be 7-ish different areas that we will be having open, so that small groups of people can get together and talk. And we are, in our last state math coordinator meeting, it was requested that we actually do that twice. So we have 2 40-minute opportunities of being able to be in different sections. But before, look at me, I'm like, hey, let me give you an overview of the day, and I went straight to lunch. But we do actually have some things planned before lunch, but just letting you know that we do have lunch. We have welcome and updates like normal. We have a fun little activity about student outcomes and what we do together as math and science people. We also have really exciting news related to the STEM endorsements. And then also science is getting ready to start a new assessment, but we are all very interested in assessment, so we have an assessment panel discussion. And then we're super excited because we always love any time that Sarah Young can come and share some digital teaching and learning, and she's going to come and share some information with us on that before lunch begins. With that being said, I'm going to turn the time over to Ricky. I'm going to be so fast.
Yes. All right, science standard. That's our first update for today. So, did you, oh, are we doing that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Really?
I said we were doing that.
All right, I guess we're going to go around and introduce you.
Because we're not always together, and so I think it would be great if we went around the room and said, hey, I'm math, I'm science, I'm STEM, I'm
So, name, math, oh, I have 2 mics going. That's freaking awesome. Name, math, science, and what LEA you were from, or institution, or organization.
Is that working? Cool. Science, and I'm from the University of Utah.
Jessica Dwyer, Center for Science and Math Education at the University of Utah.
Megan Black, Science at Granite School District.
Paul Nance, Science at Jordan District.
Bonita Richens, Cache County School District, Math and STEM.
Renee Seckmiller, Sevier School District and Math.
Kelly Peterson, Sevier School District, Science.
Chantal Cowan, Tooele School District, Math and Science.
Don Barson, Joab School District, Math.
Joyce Crocker, Special Ed Math, Granite District.
Dee Rigdon, Granite District, Math.
Jed Jensen, Emory, Math, Science.
Ralph Worthen, Emory, Math, Science.
Dwayne Merrill used to be Emory, BYU, Physical Science Teacher Preparation.
Casey Jackson, Navigator Point Academy, Math and Science.
I'm Lorraine Gale, Science Center for CSME, Weber State.
Keena Prettyman, Channing Hall, Math.
Jennifer Boyer Thurgood, Weber School District, Math.
George Richardson, Millard School District, Math and Science.
Maven Larson, Millard School District, Science.
Steve Jackson, Alpine, Math.
Alan Jacobson, Davis High School, Math.
Sherry Hyder, Weber School District, Math.
Desiree Smoot, Ranches Academy, Math.
Josh Stowers, Biology Education Program, BYU.
Mitz Bryant, Math Science, Guadalupe School.
Janae Powell, American International School Academic Coordinator.
Ryan Christiansen, Washington County, Science.
Jane Conway, Utah State Board of Ed. I handle the T Ssp program.
Greg Burke, I'm in industry. I'm doing return to licensure in math.
Brian Palmer, Kane County School District, Science.
Clint Glover, Kane County, Math.
David Valla, Murray School District, Science.
Melissa Garber, Jordan, Math.
Wendy Harmon, Jordan School District, Math.
Elizabeth Felt, Jordan District, also Math.
Kellyanne Wakely, Canyons, Math.
Allison Duncan Canyons, Secondary Math.
Colby Wilson, Science. Canyons.
Chadley Anderson Davis, Math and STEM. Tammy Short, Logan City School District, Math.
Charlie Matthews, Park City Science Coordinator.
Natalie Dutro, Science at Judge Memorial.
Jet War, Iron County, Math.
Erica Thomas, Provo City School District, Math.
And we had a few walk in. Megan Funk, Pinnacle, Pinnacle Academy, and I saw Don Monson come in representing the Utah Science Teachers Association. All right, I'm doing 2 mics again. Okay, so back to updates. We good? Yeah. Science standards are up for review on February 2nd. A committee of the State Board of Education, the Standards and Assessment Committee, approved a report that was created by the State Standards Review Committee. There are lots of committees. The State Standards Review Committee met. They put together some suggestions for the new K-5 and 9-12 science standards. It went to the board on February 2nd. That committee approved it 4-1. It now goes to the full board next Thursday on the 15th. So, going forward, if the full board approves this report, we get green light for science standards writing, meaning that at that point, I've gotten a lot of questions from some of you and a lot of your teachers that have applied to be on writing teams. So just kind of as an update, people are like, I haven't heard anything, haven't been selected, did I just not know? Nothing's been done. When that green light flips on March 15th, assuming that it will, then what's going to happen is the team leaders that have been organized for these different standards will get together, they will select their teams, and then everyone will get notified as to who's on, dates, times. So we're kind of in a holding pattern until next Thursday. So if you have science teachers that are interested, that's what we're looking for as far as the future of that. So there's science standards. Questions before I go forward? Oh, need a mic. I know. Thanks, Chad.
Where are the public comment opportunities? Is that window still open?
For next Thursday?
For next Thursday.
So if you are interested in giving public comment to the full board, if you were there for the committee meeting, it was pretty open, right? Anyone who wanted to speak in committee can speak. When it comes to full board, there are limited options for public comment. If you're interested in that, you'll need to contact Lorraine Austin. I'll get the information. If you want, come talk to me. I'll get your information. But you talk to Lorraine Austin and you sign up with her if there's still spots available. But that's how you get on public comment for that. It'll happen at the beginning of the meeting. It's about a 5 to 10 minute period. And then that's it. But there it is. Other questions? Love it. Okay, next updates, U-Star. We went through pretty smooth this year if you're involved in the U-Star program. U-Star was again fully funded in the early February. It was fully funded and nothing happened to it later on. So we still have $6.2 million for the fiscal year 19, so for next fiscal year. For those that are not familiar with U-Star, it's kind of, there's an application program. Right now the funding is currently pretty much it's all allotted out. So there isn't going to be funding available as far as we know for the next couple years. But let me know if you have specific questions about that. Know that with our current system, for FY19, we did have you put together program description spreadsheets, if you remember those, that kind of had a plan of here's what we're doing. So you'll expect an email from me. I've already started drafting it, probably within the next week or so, asking you, if you're an administrator of U-Star, to kind of think again, what did we do this year with our U-Star money? What are we doing next year? And kind of make some, if you want to make some changes or whatever. But if you don't want to make changes to your U-Star plan, then simply change the date and resubmit it to me, because I'll be bugging you. I need to make sure I get one of these for everyone for next year. This is simply for us to be able to track how you plan on using money, and then when you start submitting reimbursements, we can match it to that. With that said, I get emails fairly frequently asking, well, can I use money for travel? Or we have a group of let's say Science Olympiad kids that have won a competition. Can we use this money? And the answer is for that, yes, you can use that. But then when I look on your program descriptions, you have allotted $0 for travel. So be very cognizant and thinking for the next year, what will I possibly be using this money for? Know that there is some flexibility based on the rules. As long as the change from one pocket to another within your allotment isn't more than 10%, you can make changes without letting me know. But if it becomes more than that, you will have to contact me and say, we've had a change and I'll need some documentation to support that. But for the most part, U-Star is the same. Another thing I want to make sure, for the most part, we tried really hard this year trying to get you and your business administrators to submit reimbursements. We kind of set some guidelines quarterly. Please send us at least something. And we have a lot of people that have been doing that every quarter. But even with that, we'll say that so let's just say this, by March 15th, 3/4 of your money should have been spent and reimbursed. Like, it should be spent. There's no reason why it shouldn't be, because the deadline is still June 30th. So most of your summer stuff should be paid for. You're now going through the year month by month. So by June 30th, you should be pretty much done. So if you'd like to know where you're standing, because again, some of you administer the program, but you don't administer the reimbursement. So please work with your business administrator, work with me. Let me know if you don't know and you would like me to tell you, I'll tell you where I see that you are. But there are still about, I want to say 5 or 6 LEAs that still have not submitted a single reimbursement. And again, again, by this point, we should be 3/4 spent. So please look into that. Take some time to do that. The next thing is all U-Star monies must be spent for this fiscal year by June 30th. They do have a very solid and strong end of the fiscal year now with this money because it is state funding. So June 30th, your money should be spent and hopefully reimbursed if possible for this fiscal year. Questions for U-Star? All right, we're flying through.
Okay, so presidential awards. As most of you know, that the cycle goes elementary 1 year, K-6, and then 7, 12, or secondary the next year. So last year was the secondary year, and this year we're having a banquet to kind of celebrate the finalists from last year. Well, we're also getting ready to submit applications for elementary. So some of you have already recommended teachers, nominated them to start their application process for elementary, but we wanted to let you know that the nomination window is still open until April 1st. So if you have an outstanding elementary math or science teacher you would like to nominate for the award, there's still a couple more weeks to do that. And then their application is actually due May 1st. And a month is kind of a short amount of time to get that whole application done, so the sooner the better. And we also want you to know that there are mentors available. So if you have somebody you've nominated and you feel like they might need some support through the program, we do have mentors available. So just talk to Ricky if it's for science and to me if it's for math. We tried something new this year by having kind of an information meeting for applicants. And it went really well, but we had only a few teachers show up. So that's something we probably want to try to continue in the future, but get more teachers on board getting information. Any questions on paints? Okay, if you are online, will you please try to mute your microphone?
I can't see an audio jack in the back, but it's just like on these Apple TV, so maybe we'll have to.
Is there a way you can go in as the mute everyone?
Yeah, that's what I know of. I just stuff for that's your audio.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, any questions on paints? No?
She's pretty tech savvy lady.
So she'll have stuff for you on Tuesday, hopefully.
Okay, Kelly is here from the STEM Action Center. So she is going to give us a couple updates on some grants and things going on.
Well, hello. So we just wanted to remind everybody one more time. You've probably been inundated by emails, I hope, because we've sent out a lot. But if you haven't, this is important for you to know. So first thing I want you guys to be aware of, our professional learning grant, the application is open now and is due the end of this month. It's very similar to the application from last year. You can either apply for a 1-year grant or a 3-year grant if you haven't done that in the past. These are either school level or district level applications. Typically these dollars for the professional learning grant end up being used for things like teacher off contract time for additional professional learning. The requirements as far as participating in this grant, first one is it has to relate to STEM. Okay, so that doesn't mean that it's only for science and math and CTE technology and engineering teachers. It can be for entire staffs, but it needs to have a STEM focus. So if you want to have STEM integrated into all of your course content, if that's a goal of your school or LEA, then this would be an appropriate grant for that. Like I said, it's due at the end of this month. The other grant that's due at the end of this month is the application to indicate or to request digital personalized learning math licenses. So also due at the end of this month. We're coming up on the end of a 3-year cycle for that, so priority will be given to new schools that haven't been funded previously. That's not to say that existing schools won't be funded, just that those other schools are going to get priority. Any questions about STEM Action Center grants right now? If you do have questions, feel free to let me know. I didn't put my email address on that, but that's okay because no one can see it. We can over here. The other thing that we want to let you guys know, we've been doing something called STEM Spotlights. These are weekly little kind of one-pagers that we've been putting out. We've been doing it for about a year, and we've been getting really positive responses from them. But we would like to get some submissions from you guys as to schools and individuals that you feel should be acknowledged. So when somebody gets nominated for this, we'll come down, we'll do some interviewing, we'll take some pictures, maybe some video. We actually just made a really excellent kind of, I don't want to say testimonial, but I can't think of another word right now, with Melissa Mendenhall. It looks great if you haven't seen it yet. So we'll come down and do that. We just really want to highlight the endeavors and efforts that our schools are putting into STEM learning. So if you have your computer and go to stem.utah.gov, you can do it right now. And then scroll to the bottom of our homepage. There is a place where you can submit, there's like a submit your, or nominate your person, okay? We just need a little bit of information to get started, and then what we do with those documents when they're finished, we send them to your legislators, so both Senate and House of Representatives folks, so they know what's going on in your school. We will send them to the superintendent, and then it's also available in perpetuity online, and if you'd like additional print copies, we can get those to you as well. Yes. You may. Yes, so individuals, teams, schools, even industry partners that are doing great work within your communities, we love to feature them. And if you want to see an example of the ones we've done this year, you can find them on the website as well. Thanks, Jess, that's perfect. Did you?
If you can go to the shared meeting notes right now under the STEM-AC updates, we wanted to add one more thing about the grants Kelly was talking about. So we often have LEAs and schools saying, well, what can these professional learning grants go towards? And they're not always sure exactly what type of professional development to ask for. So we thought it might be helpful to come up with a recommended list, not an exclusive list, but a recommended list. So here are some things that we're thinking, and we want your feedback. If you agree with these as some top priorities that the STEM-AC could fund for professional development, or if there are other things that you think would be great that you would like to add. So for math, we just have a couple ideas of the comprehensive instructional framework. I know several districts, Davis and Jordan and NEPO are doing that now. So that would be a recommended. Principles to actions, and then specifically the effective math teaching practices from principles to actions, and then progressions in the core standards. So if you agree with those, go into the document and give your feedback as to why you do or do not agree with them, or if you have other ideas you think would be helpful, that would be great. For science, 3D science and phenomenon-based learning, ACCESSE, Ricky, I'm not sure what that is, but those resources. And then new standards training. So for 6-8 right now, and then K-5 and 9-12 moving into the future. And then for STEM, how they can create integrated learning opportunities. So if you would go into the document right now and give some feedback there, we'd really appreciate if you're like, yes, I agree with these. Here are some other things I'd like to add. We'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Also, you guys, Kelly had mentioned her email address. It's here in the shared notes, so we added that. So you have that. Ricky, what were you saying that you wanted to? Oh, okay, great. Thanks. Then the next thing on the agenda is to talk about our conferences that are coming up. And the first one that we'd love to share with you is the Systems Conference. So many of you may be familiar with the Multi-Tiered System of Supports Conference that occurs every year. That is happening this year on June 18th, 19th, and 20th. And it is a systems conference that is more focused on these areas. So there's collective efficacy, equitable access, and tiered support. So it's not just multi-tiered systems of supports, but it is focusing on how do we support classroom environments, analyzing student data, and planning for improvement. We're really excited about having a new MTSS math framework out for that period of time, but this is going to be a great strand for teachers and specialists and coaches. The other thing that is new this year is that we also are like, when we really are encouraging these groups of people to come, why don't we also have a strand for administrators? So this conference is actually going to be as much for administrators as it is for teachers and coaches. They will have a different lens. So it is like, how do I move as a leader how do I move our school forward with collective efficacy, equitable access, and aligning systems? So like determining priorities and that sort of thing. And there are a lot of administrators that I know that are planning to attend this conference. So this is also a great time to kind of coordinate efforts and get people together with that. And then with that being said, the administrative strand, by the way, is just June 18th and 19th. So when I said June 18th, 19th, and 20th, the MTSS strand has that third day of work groups, and then the focus for the leadership strand is the 18th and 19th. There are calls for proposals that will be coming out any day, and it's going to be great. Salome Thomas L. is one of the keynote speakers, if you guys know who that happens to be. And then our next conversation is, I know we just finished the USTA.
UCTM, and it is October 12th and 13th in the Canyons District. Flyers, see the flyers, see the beautiful flyer that Jet made. And applications for presenters are now open. Just go to the website for all the information. In Canyons District.
Like all of that stuff was planned to be like by today, but that didn't happen by today. So I'm hoping that it happens like by like next Friday. But Regit, thank you so much for letting us know that that question is there. Yes. Yeah, thank you so much. That we literally, like what we love about Google Drive is we literally put the flyer up on the PowerPoint, but it is awesome that you can see information on the flyer that Jack created. Is two-sided, so there's lots of great information on the back side as well. The next thing that we have is legislative updates. One of the reasons that we have this meeting on this day is it is right after the legislative session, and we love to give you updates on what's been decided. Usually, Diana Sedrith, our teaching and learning director, shows us a binder that is like this thick of all the different things related to education have gone through. This year, it is like this thick. So there are not as many this year. And when it comes to math and science, Ricky already mentioned that USTAR is funded at 6.2. IC, we have a funded zoo as full. And there are a couple of other things that are not specific to math or science that we will actually put out via email, because literally many things happened at midnight last night because that's when the session ended. But when it comes to big things that are happening in math and science, it's great to know that these things are going on. And then we also wanted to give you a T Ssp update, but instead of just giving you like, hey, here's in the moment what's going on, we thought that we would have Jane Conway, our T Ssp guru, come on up and share some information. So Jane, whenever you're on, my friend. Yep. Yeah, that's how, and that's how. Yep. So I know that's the fastest legislative updates that we've ever done. Jane does have an update, but we also thought that we would make this opportunity to be able to share more information about T Ssp in general. Yes.
That's CTE. It's partnership with GoEd and yeah, that's a CTE separate funding on the mic.
Do you want to talk? Do you have anything you can say about
I
that?
don't have much to say because I'm from CTE. I don't need a mic. I'm good.
No,
Or is
but
it for the recording?
We're recording.
All right, so I come from CTE. I'm the health science specialist, so I've done the medical innovations pathway. The IT pathway is separate from this, and there's no legislative fiscal notes with that. That's just something that's going through. The contact for that is Brandon Jacobson in CTE, and he's the one that can give information on the IT pathways through GoEd, the partnership with GoEd, USBE, and industry.
Is it me now?
Yes.
Boy, I can't tell you how long I've waited to have an audience again. Thank you very much for inviting me to this. Normally, Travis Rawlings, my coordinator, keeps me well hidden because watching legislative session is really more like watching baseball, and I'm saying safe, or out. So it was a pretty active year this year for TSSP. Last year, we got a little bit disappointed for anyone who followed it. Great ideas, great turn of ideas of who's going to be eligible, who's going to be able to play the game, and then last minute, nothing. So this year we had a much better performance with TSSP through the legislature. We had some really good advocates for us. And it works how?
There's a slide on the side.
Yeah. Technologically challenged. Green.
I don't know.
Okay. Just hit the button.
Maybe it's a battery thing working through here.
Well, it's got a light on it. So I was going to give you guys a quick rundown for those of you. Is everyone here familiar with TSSP? Know it like the back of your hand? Everybody in your team is on TSSP that's eligible? Blank crickets there. That's good. Okay. So for TSSP, I'm going to give you a quick rundown about our program. The TSSP was implemented in 2009 initially, handled by DHRM, and it's for math and science educators, and it's trying to draw people in, trying to draw people in from other industries that are in math and sciences into education and hopefully hold them. Historical modifications happened, adding computer science in 2015, and then last year we added national board certification recognition for educators. Not only are we paying them for having a classroom and being national board certified, but we're also reimbursing them for those expenses if it was done after 2016 and that they are in the classroom. So it was a great addition to that program. So our legislative session, this is our big cut to the chase. House Bill 332, nice typo, Jane. Oh no, I beg your pardon. This is the old one. So what we did is we added our national board certification. You get $750 if you're in a classroom with the students, up to $750. You're teaching national board and national board certified educator in the classroom in a Title I school. It doubles the money to $1,500. There's a lot of money on the table for educators who aren't aware of this program, and we really want to make sure that they're out there. Also, educators who don't qualify necessarily for the TSSP, talk to them about getting their national board. Have them up it. Get those qualified educators in with that certification so that they're recognized and we can also award them. So who qualifies for TSSP? You have to have a current Utah license. You have to have assignments posted in Cactus in a public and charter or a charter school. So the private schools are not recognized in this program. The assignment has to be qualifying for TSSP, so it has to be one of those group areas. And you have to hold an appropriate and current endorsement for the assigned course area. They give you an example of how this one backfires. Educators who are in our ARL programs, APT programs, have a letter of authorization. They get in there and they've got this and they get that the first year and they qualify because they had that temporary license with that temporary endorsement. The next year they do it again. The next year they do it again. What happens the third year? No more letters of authorization. Wait a minute, I got the money the last 3 years. Sorry, folks, you got to have your endorsement. It has to be current, has to be the appropriate endorsement. They previously had to have a master's, bachelor's, or doctorate degree with a major specifically in that course area, and they had to have an employee receive a satisfactory rating, or if they're a new employee, they're in good standing and making progress. TSSP fund was designed as a salary benefit up to $4,100 each fiscal year. This is every year, folks. They get $4,100 just for being the right guy at the right place. And it's paid through their payroll. It covers retirement, workers' comp, and Social Security and Medicare. We cover that extra bonus so that the LEAs don't have to come up with that extra money because we just gave them an extra salary. Educators had the choice to elect semester, trimester payments, or an annual payment at the end of the program year, which usually happens around June. Nice cold medication, making me thirsty. Thank you. Here's a screen of the opening. I don't know if any of you been to the TSSP website, doodled around? Good, thank you. It took us forever. We launched this in progress last year. It was a work in progress all year long. So this is the homepage for our TSSP. Educators can log into this program and apply. We also have setups for LEA approvers in each of the districts who take care of their accounts and help mandate it. If you want access to this, I can grant limited access so you can see things. You guys are controlling or in an influential place. We have a method to get it in so you can see those applications and kind of help your educators out if that's the case. But you can talk to me about that and we'll see what we can do. This is what a normal screen looks like for an educator. So this is what, it just has basic information. This is their qualifying, if they qualify for this stuff. This is the qualification. This is the cut to the chase. If it doesn't say TSSP qualified, they don't get the money. Something's wrong. This is our national board certification. It tells the educator throughout the year, how much money did you get? We allocated this much money. This is what it was TSSP. This is your benefit amount. This is your employer paid portion of the benefit. And there's your total. So it really helps the educator understand what's going on, where the progress is, so they're not stalking their LEA HR people or perhaps you, that they can kind of hopefully figure this out on their own. The other thing is, if you notice, there's color differentials there. It's an indicator, hopefully a visual indicator to our educators that there's something wrong. Not everything's green. Why is it yellow? This indicates that this math person, math is a qualified area. Math, we pay for math. This person also is teaching chemistry. However, they don't have a mathematics degree. So unfortunately, the way legislation is written, only the degree that matches the corresponding course area and subject area gets paid. So in order for this person to get the full value, they'd also have to have a mathematics degree. Yay. So this also tells us, so if there's something missing, it helps us identify what's wrong, how do I fix this? If it's a matter that their degree isn't thing, this person has other C transcript. Maybe they have a mathematics education degree. We need to review that and possibly do an appeal to see if they qualify. And this is our rundown. Everybody that's touched it and done anything with it, so the educator sees a history of who's touching, who's doing, who denied it, who and why. And if you hover on any of these underlined items, it actually gives a notation in there so the educator gets it. When anything is sent through this system, like an approval, denial, any kind of update, the educator gets an automatic email. So we're trying to keep them looped in as often as we can so that they can fix stuff early if it's required, or at least have a set expectation of when their payments are happening. So how much money are we talking about? To figure this out, it's the assignment percentage that qualifies times the FTE times 4,100, which is our benefit maximum. And then, of course, we take that total, multiply it by the total of the benefits, which is the Social Security, taxes, all that. And then we get that, and that's the employer paid portion, and that's given to the educators through payroll. It's distributed every month or every quarter or trimester or whatever the interval is, and it's through the monthly allotment memo, so then it goes through HR payroll. So the TSSP doesn't show the person is qualified, they get denied, they start doing the freak dance. They may talk to you, talk to them about it, call me. We walk through. Oftentimes it's a clerical thing that they didn't get their degree posted. They forgot to send in their master's degree. So we need to know about it. But in the event that they feel like they've qualified and there's just something not right with the degree, and they've done so much math, but they don't have a mathematics major, they did an engineering, we want to do the appeal. The appeal is a free thing. They just need to submit that documentation with the original transcripts. Our biggest problem with the appeal process is that we aren't allowed to use cumulative total of coursework completed. It has to be, I got a degree, and in that degree, these are the math classes or the science classes that I took. So that's a little bit of a disappointment because a lot of people are out there doing the job. They're in the trenches. They're the excellent math and science teachers. But unfortunately, the Utah legislature did not allow us to interpret it in the, I got my endorsement. So, well, this is the shorter one. Whoops. Okay, one other thing I wanted to talk about was the new changes to House Bill 233, subsection 5. We were passed this year, so not only did we get the addition of our special education educators who were originally supposed to be part of this program back in 2009. They're now going to be recognized and part of the program. But they changed the qualifications for the science folks. I noticed that math is here and science is there. Did you assign them seats? No, it just kind of worked out that way. Yeah, I'll ask science folk over here. Little mix. Yeah, play nice. So what has happened is prior to, for those of you who are aware of the program, anybody who was teaching biology didn't get they were teaching, let's try that again. They have a degree in biology. They weren't qualified for the program, even though they have an endorsement to teach chemistry and physics. That has now been removed, thank goodness. And so now all of your science educators who are qualified, listed as USBE qualified in physics, chemistry, physical science, there it is, here we go. So anybody in teaching physics, chemistry, physical science, 7th and 8th grade science are now qualified if they have a degree major in a field of science. So big, very good, yeah. I can now focus on disappointing a whole different group of people. I'm really excited for this. So the other thing was the additional special education. That's going to double the program. I've yet to hear the final end of the fiscal dance, but yeah. So that's where we stand for latest and greatest in TSSP. Yes. Oh, we got a mic there. Well, I'll stand close. I don't want to stand close. I got this cold's going away, but
you guys also,
it's a gift that keeps giving
the
and giving.
Google Drive, putting in questions that are there too. We can do it that way, but that way people can also see the questions on Google Drive.
I just want to be sure I understand this clearly. Say a teacher qualifies for the $4,100 a year. They're also national board certified, and they're also in a Title I school. They would be eligible for all of those funds
Show
annually.
me the money. Yes.
And then is the additional national board compensation line item? Like, can they count on that? Is there a sunset on that?
No.
Okay.
At this point in time, as part of the program, there is no deadline on this. There are some stipulations as far as you're talking about the person who just qualifies, they have our national board. National board runs as long as your national board certification is in play. So right now, most of the educators in our system have national board certification that runs for 10 years, a 10-year circuit. The new ones being awarded starting this year are a five-year life expectancy, and they can renew every 5 years. So you can get it if you're a renewed or if you're a current, but it must be current and in the system. We get that upload from National Board every December once those are awarded, and we automatically update the system. But if you have an educator that comes in from another state, we may not be aware of their National Board certification, so make sure that they follow up with us and make sure that that documentation gets to us so we can put that line item in. The reimbursement for that program is also out there, and I got none last year applying for it. Anyone who had a National Board certification granted to them or renewed last year and going forward from 2016, we'll reimburse you for the $3,000 that you spent or the $2,800 expenses. We have a reimbursement fund. There is one slight item to that. In the event, and historically, TSSP up to this time, we've had about a $1.3 million surplus. I hate using that word, but a surplus that we didn't use all that money. I have about an 87% participation rate in the program, and it's gone up about 3% every year, which is why talking to you is so important, getting the word out there for educators who can get this money. We're not allowed to say, you qualify, you've got the stuff, here's your money. We're not allowed to do that. It has to be proactive by the educator. So help us get the word out there so we can get more of a maybe 97 or 100%. But worst case scenario, we run out there and everybody plays the game, everybody gets big money, and then we run out of funds. It's going to get distributed equally still among everyone, but we take off that micro percentage so that all is fair across the board. Worst case scenario, we run out of money, we share it out, we have enough, but then the National Board reimbursements, those are handled as a line item after. Those are the last thing we possibly do in the fiscal year. If we run out of money, those are the first come, first serve. Next year, if we have money, you get paid back. So there is no lockdown timeline guarantee on the reimbursement for that, but it's also taking that individual about 3 to 4 years to get that certification. So rather owe it to you than cheat you out of it is sort of the mentality I have to have. Yes, go ahead.
If someone wants to seek their National Board certification and they're not already in the TSSP
No, TSSP can be enrolled at any time during the school year. Open enrollment for that starts in October and ends April 30th. So if you get an educator that last minute goes, holy Hannah, I think I qualify, they need to submit that application online and get in there if they're qualified. If they don't qualify and we're missing something, we have a little time to fix it up. We have that thing. Did I answer that question?
I have 10 teachers who do not currently qualify for TSSP. When I tell them they can go back and get their national board certification in order to be part of the TSSP.
Right. Oh, the national board.
For them, even though they're not already part of TSSP.
No, yeah, national board kind of runs its own independence. So a kindergarten teacher who has a national board for early childhood, they can participate, but they don't have to be a math and science educator or special ed. TSSP is its own little drawer in the big dresser of TSSP monies. So yeah, they can. The other thing I want to caution folks on when they're talking to somebody to get that degree to qualify for TSSP. Oftentimes they go out and find a very cost-effective method through a university to get that master's degree. It is very important that they get a master's degree especially for math. It's mathematics. Not all mathematics education degrees qualify. So other states, when we put it into Cactus, it's got to be part of the predestined list that's in there from our antiquated system. If it's mathematics education, it's not in there. So it is automatically going to need to be audited or appealed at Department. Yeah.
This will begin next year. When do they put in their application? Did they wait until after April to apply for next year? Or what is the
No, they won't be able to apply till October. The system opens October 1st, and last application goes in April 30th. So they can apply at any time. Early applications allow that person to elect, if my school's a trimester, I can do trimester payments. If we're broken on a semester schedule, I can do semester payments. So they can break that payment down into two, or they can just get the whole thing like the income tax at the end of the year and just get my big bonus right then. My questions?
Great.
Yes. Yeah.
Does the, I'm going to read it because on the microphone. Is this what you're reading? Does the in a field of science include a biology or other area teaching degree? And by the way, we're going to answer this and one more, and then any other questions that come up, that's awesome, but we'll have Jane answer them on the Google Drive so that we can move on to the next item.
I know you're so riveted with TSSP. I get it.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So, you got another question? Or?
So the question is, does the in a field of science include a biology teaching degree?
Oh, yes. Yeah. This year, no. No, does it teaching biology? So if it has a biology degree, this year, no, unfortunately. Next year with the new legislation, starting the school year 18-19, biology degree major will qualify, but teaching biology will not be part of that percentage. So if you're in the biology class, we're still not paying for biology, but if you're teaching chemistry, physics.
But if the degree is biology teaching, that's a thumbs up?
Yeah, because it's a field of science.
So is it the BS?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then the last question we're doing here, and then everything else, you guys, this is a great place to put that, is this available for K-12 SPED or just secondary special education?
Excellent question, because it is yet to be fine-tuned. More information will be available on the TSSP website, which is located on Utah State Board of Ed's site under educator licensing, and there's a tab there for TSSP. We'll have all the updates there and fine-tune out and kind of vet out what course areas. I don't anticipate us knocking out the special ed elementary. It's special ed. But I don't know about preschool because that was one that came up yesterday. So we're still finding that one out.
Great.
Folks,
thank you
very
so
much.
much. Let's give it up for Jane. Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. This is mine.
That hair.
The hair is mine.
I don't mind it. Okay,
Yeah.
you want that?
It's gray though. You don't want it.
Thanks so much. Okay, you guys, I am really excited because the next thing that we are doing is an activity where you are getting to work together. And this is actually something similar to what Diana Sudrith did in a recent curriculum directors meeting. And so I hope that you are sitting near someone, if you're a math person, that's sitting near someone in science, because the first thing that I would like for us to do is be thinking about like student outcomes related to your field of area, and then you're going to share with someone who is in a different field of area. And by the way, you can be in groups of 3 or whatever. In my mind, I had actually envisioned this being a moment where we'd get up and walk around. I realize that we're kind of tight quarters in the space, so kind of talk to each other like moving in some way so that you're not having to sit for the whole time. But before we begin, I would love for you to think about this. So kind of quietly first, what are the things in your content area that increases the number of students who basically are successful on end-of-level assessments? So what are the things that are happening in our field that is making it so that students are being more successful on the end-of-level assessment? I'm going to take a minute to be thinking about that, and then I'd love for math and science people to be sharing with each other. So if you please turn to a partner and talk about what are the things that we are currently doing in blank to help students be more proficient on end-of-level assessments. And so please go ahead and turn to your partner.
Hey Ricky, since we have a poor video connection, there's something about our video is making it so it's not giving reliable video feeds.
I wonder if it's because so many people are talking in the moment. Has it always been like that or just recently?
It's just recently it's been popping up. The error message essentially says something.
See if that, will you see if that keeps happening? Okay, you guys, thank you so much for coming back. Walking around, it was so great to hear your conversations. In fact, there are a few conversations I'd like for us to capture. In fact, I have to confess, when I was first walking around, I was like, science, science, science. Every table I was like, let me tell you what's happening in science. So with some of the passionate things that are going on in science, I'm going to have someone share their science conversation of what they're doing.
So what we were talking about is with the new seed standards that coming to a Utah classroom near us soon is going to be K-5, 912. Phenomena-based 3D science naturally appeals and addresses more differentiated learning. Therefore, the assessments, I think we're going to begin seeing more and more, and we already are starting to, more into the 3s and 4s. The kids that can look at data but maybe at a very low lexile reading level, we're addressing all different types of learning abilities and cognitive areas that these kids are good at. So.
Thank you so much. And lots of great science things going on. And then also, there was some math, and it was great.
I think some of the things that are exciting about improving instruction in math are the focus on DOK and really looking at how we can increase the rigor in our classrooms. And when you increase the DOK and the rigor, you automatically get discussion and tasks, which we know to be good instruction. So.
And I'm hoping that we were all thinking, and within our own small conversations as well, about how aligned our math and science conversations are. How are we getting students talking and having reasoning and problem solving going on in our classroom? Super appreciate that. So the next thing I'd like to also have you think about on your own for a moment before we share with a partner is when it comes to student outcomes, I want us to think about equitable outcomes as well. So when I say what are the things that we're doing to increase access to advanced placement, concurrent enrollment, and international baccalaureate offerings for every student, this is something that happens to be currently in Education Elevated, which is why the slide is here. But I want us to think in elementary, what are the things that we are doing to ensure that every student has access to grade level content and that it is and that it's rich content? And what are the things that we're doing in high school to decrease opportunity gaps and increase these offerings for every student? So thinking about what you have going on in your school or charter or district that is decreasing opportunity gaps and increasing equitable outcomes. And thank you for thinking about, but go ahead and please, and thank you for thinking, and now please go ahead and share with your partner. Thanks. Okay, guys, we'll come back together.
Stick of power.
Okay, you guys. Coming back to equitable access. And again, lots of great conversations. I'm going to have someone share talking about instruction. So, because lots of different great things going on. And so Sally Ann.
So we talked about the instruction at different levels just within the school in different classes. So your honors class oftentimes has a lot more rigor than those students who may not be in an honors class. In Title I schools, we see the teacher doing a lot of instruction, a lot of her talking or him talking versus good problem solving. So we need to, that's when the inequity comes. We need to make sure that no matter if your student's in a honors course or in a remedial course, they're still getting the same type of rigorous instruction.
Awesome, thank you. So really sometimes when we think about equity and we're talking about what are the things that we are doing to make sure that every student is on grade level, another component of equity is making sure that we're really being cognizant of the type of instruction that's happening in all of our classes. And it goes back to the first one that we talked about, where it's what are we doing with tasks? How are we ensuring students are having great discourse, and that they are the authors of their learning, if you will. Did anyone also talk about anything that they are doing specifically that is ensuring that every student in 11th grade is taking Math 3? And sorry, science people, that I'm doing that as the example. Or something similar. Or that every student is having access, because when the conversation is increasing access to advanced placement, that's like in mathematics, that means that the student is not opting out of Math 3. So, Chadley, thank you. I guess it doesn't matter.
There's a couple things that we're doing, and probably a lot of you are aware we do our summer AP conference where we train the teachers that are teaching the AP classes, and that's made our teachers in our district much more aware of the AP classes and that they can teach them. So we have a bigger variety now of teachers capable of teaching those classes. And then we recognize that it doesn't start as juniors. And so we created a conference for our middle school teachers from 7th through, well, we do 7 through 9 there, particularly because we recognize that those teachers that are teaching honors, that's our pipeline to get them to the AP classes. And so we offer that conference in the summer for the junior high teachers as well, which is open to the state if you want it.
Great, thank you. So really having more of an awareness and having that awareness happening earlier. Thank you very much. So our last one that we're doing, and one more time, if you'll just kind of like think about this for a moment yourself, and then before sharing with the person sitting next to you. So just a moment to think about what is happening in our district to increase the graduation rate, or what has been happening that you think has made an impact. I can tell you at the state level that the graduation rate has increased over 12% in the past 6 years, which is significant. Just a few years ago, it was under 80%, and now it's like 86%. There are things that are already happening that are pretty awesome, but maybe you're aware of the graduation rate within your own district or things that are happening in and of itself. So what are the things that we have been doing and what are the things that we are focusing on doing to increase the graduation rate even more. And about 1 minute think time. And by the way, I just realized I'm talking about the things that we do in our district and in our charter school and in our own schools, but I also am like realizing that higher ed also plays a part in all of these things. So what are the things that are happening in higher ed and in all of our different communities that are making this impact? So if you'll also, this is the last one, please go ahead and share with your partner. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. We're going to come back together. And there were lots of great conversations going on with this. One of the ideas that we're going to share out is coming from, we're like all over the room today, which is awesome. So we're going to have a sharing conversation from Alan. Thank you.
I was going to start my coughing attack and just hand the microphone to Sherry, but I think I'd be hurt later. So, next year I'm moving back to the classroom. I'm going to open Farmington High School, and our whole school will be based on a standards-based grading format, and really pushing ourselves to keep the kids engaged in what they are. Nobody's going to fail a class. They just won't get credit until they show the learning has taken place. So I'm not sure what all you wanted me to say other than
I think that the focus is on like standards-based grading and that they are showing what they've done. I think you're awesome. I think that's great. So thank you so much. I do hear a lot of that going around in different subject areas about standards-based grading. And as we shift from this conversation to our next conversation, I just want to take a moment and really share that I am passionate about education in general, but I'm extremely passionate about STEM education in the state of Utah, and really passionate about the fact that we know that when it comes to workforce skills and it comes to being involved with making sense of what's going on, that we really are in the same situation as like our CTE counterpart. We all want students making sense of problems. We all want students being creative about how they solve problems. And we also really want every student to have that opportunity. That it is not just for some students to have that opportunity, but for every student to have that opportunity. I do also believe that the changes that we are making or have made in mathematics education over the past so many years have contributed to the graduation rate increasing. We know for a fact that that's what prevents students from graduating from college. And then we also know that back in the day when we used to have students taking 3 years of algebra because they weren't quite making it, that was having an impact on our graduation rates. I worked in a situation where I was, in fact, it was my first year as an administrator in the school that I was in. There was this huge graduation day for 8th graders. And I was like, this is so awesome. Like they are really valuing their 8th grade students and really like making a big deal of this. It's like, it was huge. And then someone brought it to my attention. It's like, that's because in the past, more than 50% of these students will be dropping out before they graduate from high school. So this is like a big thing because of that situation. And that school really went in to make a difference and talk about how you work to make sure that students are successful. And I really loved how Alan said it. It's like, stop just failing students, focusing on what they understand and what they don't understand to make sure they're successful is really what we're about. And love that we have that going on in math and science. And I know that we all feel as passionate about what we are doing for students in those subject areas and that that's super important. Along with that, that's a kind of a high school conversation, but we also know that that is not where it begins. It's a K-12 conversation. And I'm very, very excited to turn the time over now to Shannon Ferentz and Ricky Scott, because I'm so fortunate to work with these guys. And as we talk about making shifts and doing things with instruction, they've been really working hard to talk about what does STEM education look like in elementary school. And for the past year, we have been doing something called the STEM Academy for Administrators, where when we go work with administrators, we're really focusing on what does it look like in a classroom, so that when you're giving teachers feedback, that it is not this recall of just facts, but that you're providing the opportunities that you guys were describing for the past half hour. Like, what are the things that we are doing to help our leaders in schools move that conversation forward? And I'm just really excited to turn the time over to the work that Shannon and Ricky have been doing to make those changes in elementary as well.
Thank you, Jolie. Okay, so last year we had a conversation in this very meeting about the elementary STEM endorsement, and it was just kind of, we know it's had 2 years, there needs to be some revision, we're not really sure where to go. So last year, for those of you who were here, we just looked at the course descriptions for the 6 courses in the elementary STEM endorsement, and we said, does this meet what we think STEM is? Like, what is STEM? What should it look like at the elementary level? And do these courses meet it or not? And some of us were like, yes, they meet parts of it. Some of it they're missing. And that's kind of where the conversation ended. During the last year, as Jolie mentioned, we've done a lot of work in our agency, both with administrators, with our CTE department, assessment department, other departments here at USBE, to really look at what STEM is. So we're going to take some time to talk a little bit more about what the current formats are of the endorsements, ways we're looking to improve it, and then we also want your feedback on our proposed ideas. So here are the current endorsements. So the math endorsement, for those of you who might not know, especially if you're science or the original math endorsement came out around like 2005, and these were not the courses that were in it. There were courses about technology and understanding standards and what does a K-6 learner look like. And then in 2010, there was a revision that the courses now follow the strands of mathematics. So numbers and operations, rational numbers and proportional reasoning, geometry and measurement, algebraic reasoning, assessment and intervention, and then data analysis and problem solving. So that's the current math endorsement that's been around since like 2010, 2011. And then we have the STEM endorsement that has been implemented for 2 years now. And it has 5 courses: STEM practices with technology and problem-based learning, the nature of science and engineering, matter in STEM, force in STEM, energy in STEM, and then it has the same math course that's part of the math endorsement, the data analysis and problem solving class. So that's our current endorsements. And as we were going to look at how can we make some revisions to the STEM endorsement to make sure it's meeting the needs of STEM, we're like, well, we also need to look at the math endorsement. We also just need to look at elementary endorsements in general, because unlike in a secondary world where you have people getting endorsed to teach like a level 3 math endorsement, a level 4 math endorsement, or biology or chemistry, elementary teachers are elementary teachers, and they're the same ones getting the reading endorsement, the math endorsement, the STEM endorsement. So we're like, what can we do to really make sure we're meeting the needs of all of that? And also knowing that while this math endorsement is really well functioning across the state, it hasn't been revised since we've had these new standards, and it hasn't been revised since Principles to Actions has come out. So we started looking at, we need to look at the whole picture, not just one portion. So I'm going to have Ricky talk a little bit more about the work we've done here and our ideas.
This whole conversation also, I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time as far as needs for STEM education, right? And it's really, I would still say for most of us in the room, it maybe is not 100% clear what STEM is or what STEM best practices are. I mean, the experts in STEM still don't really know what that is because it's still so new and so many things are happening. So one thing that we learned in our experience while we were planning and going through the STEM Academy for Administrators that we ran this year is in the past with that program, we would introduce STEM as being good STEM is integrated and this, and then what would we do in the last few years with this is we would have a day on science and a day on math. And we wouldn't integrate them. We were like, what are we thinking? And so this year we spent a lot of time looking at what does it look like integrated. And we would create tasks that we were presenting that would try to be as STEM as we could, aligned to a single group of standards. Like, what can we do to get this all integrated? Anyway, what we also found in this process of integrating being strong is we also found that what most people need is a good, strong content background also. If they have a really strong understanding of I don't know, maybe teaching engaging stuff, but their understanding of the content in science, engineering, math, and whatever is still weak, they're struggling, and so are their kids. And so we kind of brainstormed a possible solution for the future of the elementary STEM endorsement and some other things as well. So let's go to that. Again, nothing has been finalized, so what we're looking for today is your feedback in this. What we have created is a plan, which again is still open for feedback, in which instead of having a single STEM endorsement, that again, if you look at what that was, it was 3, depending on every university was doing it a little different, but we had 3 science classes, a single math class, a nature of science, and an engineering. Like, they were still kind of siloed in different classes. As much as in those endorsements we tried to integrate them together, they were still even being introduced as silos. And so here is our thought. What if we keep the math endorsement as it is? That's 6 classes in math. I just left them as math because they're talking about changing them, improving them anyway. And we introduce a science endorsement specific to science content. Our current frameworks around the STEM and the science areas, those frameworks don't really use explicitly 3 dimensions. They don't talk about phenomenon-based learning. They don't talk about those pieces as well. So let's update and science and create a science endorsement. Give a background in one or the other, and we get both of these teams together into one room talking specifically about integrating STEM. Some with a strong math content background, some with a strong science content background. And then, so the requirements for a STEM endorsement would be either a math endorsement or a science endorsement. And then we also have a pathway. If someone just wants STEM, then the thought that we have, and again, please understand, your minds are probably turning, but what about this? But what about that? That's the feedback we want. So wait a second. So our thought process, and then we have a third path, right? So one is just a STEM endorsement where like your top 2 most important of your math classes are taught and your top 2 most important of science, whether it's nature of science or whatever. So you're not getting a strong content with this pathway, but you're getting enough to be able to say, here's your math, here's your science, and you're still looking at integrated. So there are 3 ways to get this. One will get you 2 endorsements, math and STEM. One will get you science and STEM, and one will just be STEM. So again, wide open, lots of ideas possibly going through. Is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? But what about this? But what about that? Please, if you have a computer or someone near you does, start putting your feedback on this document. Or Sandra, you want to say something before we go there?
I was just going to talk about the feedback questions, but you can talk about.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. So we, if you have general feedback, we'd appreciate that as well. But specifically thinking, okay, sometimes when we think of an endorsement, we just start thinking like, oh, well, this would be the content that should go in the course, or this is the idea. But we want to think with the end in mind. Like, after completing these endorsements, knowing it's a lot of work for teachers to go through, they're committing to 2 to 3 years of like an evening a week plus homework and or summer classes. And at the end, though, we want to know, like, what should the teachers know and be able to do, and how will having had this endorsement change their practice? So specifically, if you want to go into the document, for a science endorsement, if we create a science endorsement, at the end of having that, if an elementary teacher says, I have an elementary science endorsement, what would you expect that they should know and be able to do for having that endorsement? Same for the math endorsement. And knowing that the math endorsement has been around for a while, and that we have teachers exiting it who are able to do a lot of things with math, and some who maybe end and we're like, how did they get that endorsement and not know how to do this thing? So what would be the end goal? If they have that endorsement, what should be the outcome that they're able to know and do because of having it? And then a STEM endorsement, looking with that integrated idea of STEM, that there's content knowledge, there's pedagogy, and there's a deep knowledge of integration. What should a teacher know and be able to do after getting a STEM endorsement? So if you could give us feedback for whichever area your expertise is, and STEM from both perspectives. And then also, what would be the benefits of having these 3 separate endorsements? Like, why would it be better to have a science, math, and STEM endorsement instead of just a math and STEM like we currently have? But also, if we go this way, what would be the challenges of implementing these 3 separate endorsements? Because we know this is a lot of work to be done, and there might be some challenges. So from your perspective, if you just want to take maybe like 5 minutes or so, you can talk with a neighbor and input your feedback into the notes. We'd really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, we'll just invite you to take about 1 minute to wrap up your conversations around these 3 pathways. We really appreciate the feedback. We see some really specific feedback for each content area. And we'll just take about 1 more minute to let you wrap that up. If you feel like you haven't been able to add all of your thoughts, we'd invite you to continue commenting later. But we'll take just a couple more seconds to wrap up our conversations now. Okay, if you could go ahead and wrap up your conversations and bring your attention back up here, please.
That plan, as we have it outlined, has already been supported if it goes through by the STEM Action Center. Like, they will support that funding-wise.
Okay, all right, if I could get our attention back up here, please. Thank you. Okay, we also wanted to mention funding sources for these endorsements. Currently, the math endorsement is kind of self-sustaining as universities and LEAs have their own pathways to offer the program. So some places they charge teachers tuition, sometimes they get grants, but it's really diverse what that looks like from IHE to other IHEs and LEAs. But through the state, we're not really funding that anymore unless an LEA or an IHE like applies for a grant asking specifically if they can have some type of support implementing that. But for several years now, the math endorsement has kind of been self-sustaining through IHEs and LEAs. The STEM endorsement has been being funded through the STEM Action Center. Kelly Yates, who spoke to you earlier, she's our liaison with the STEM Action Center, has proposed this plan to the board at the STEM Action Center, and they're fully supportive of this. So knowing that if we move forward with this, there will be funding for it. Okay, so we just have about 5 more minutes. We want to talk about the endorsement. Knowing that there's benefit for having strong content knowledge in mathematics and science and in integration. Another idea that we've had kind of for a while is having a separate, like another level of a math endorsement that addresses leadership for people who are in roles like yourselves and or other coaching roles. So there's, at the national level, AMTE, the Association for Mathematics Teacher Educators, has published standards for elementary mathematics specialists and what that should look like. And they address 3 specific areas: that they need to have strong content knowledge, strong pedagogy, and strong leadership skills. And our current endorsement addresses content and addresses pedagogy, but does not address the leadership component. And what's kind of interesting is they have collected data across the nation to see which states have elementary math specialist programs and which do not. And there are many states who don't have programs at all, but out of the about 20 or so states that do have elementary math programs, Utah is the only one that is not endorsed by the AMTE standards because it is missing the leadership component. And as we've had many conversations with people at IHEs and LEAs, we know that there are people who take the math endorsement and these teachers walk away with a greater content knowledge and they're much better able to teach elementary mathematics in their classrooms. But then there are other teachers who walk away and they are so excited about math and the research and they want more and they're ready for more. And they move into positions like coaching and leadership and specialists, and they don't know how to do that because they've never been taught how. And I was one of those people. I got my math endorsement here in Utah. I moved to another state. I happened to work for a district where they offered a course on how to be a math lead in a school and district level, and I took it from them. But that's the training I got on how to be a coach or a leader. It wasn't part of my math endorsement program. And we know that there's a need for it in Utah. We have such a strong leadership community in elementary mathematics in Utah, but we don't have a program for them. So we're thinking it'd probably be about 3 courses that these teachers would only be allowed to take after they have the content and pedagogy math endorsement. And then it would be 3 additional courses that would be a math leadership endorsement that would support people who are in roles like coaches and specialists. And then Ricky's like, well, if math gets that, I think science should have that. So, and we're like, of course. But we also know that this math endorsement is further along than the science endorsement. So we're thinking potentially there could be both pathways, or a possibility of having a STEM leadership endorsement where math and science specialists could take that together and looking into their research in their current, their specific content area, but with a lot of the leadership skills, coaching skills, and all of that combined for both of them. So we're just going to take another 3 minutes or so. Feedback here. So do we have separate leadership endorsements for math and science, or one collective leadership endorsement for STEM? What should teachers know and be able to do after completing? And this is supposed to say leadership. I think it does on your feedback form, but maybe not here. But if they were to complete a leadership endorsement in elementary mathematics or a leadership endorsement in elementary science or STEM, what should they know and be able to do? Knowing that that's separate from the content and pedagogy we just looked at, this is the leadership skills they should walk away with to know how to coach or be a specialist. So if you just want to take maybe about 3 minutes or so to go and give your feedback into the document on those approaches. And then right after that, we're going to go into a break and we'll come back about 10:20, 10:25 for an assessment panel. So feel free to have that conversation, give feedback, take a short break. Restrooms are down the hall by the elevators, and we'll start back around 10:20, 10:25. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Am I close enough? So good to see you, Meg. All right, are you ready? Okay, I'll give you another 30 seconds. I'd like to invite our panelists up. We have 3. Oh, well, let me do this. While they're coming up, and I'll introduce them in a bit. One slide we did not get to. I should go to that slide. Too many screens. So one slide we didn't get to for the elementary STEM endorsement takes us to this page on the shared notes. If you would like to get involved and have some say in this, depending on how big these are, we'll try to accommodate as many as we can. But anyway, please sign up here, give us your name, your organization, and your email address. And then we'll add you to the list of someone I'm interested in working on these endorsements or these endorsements. Feel free to sign up in multiple places if you want to. And that's that. So we're going to move on. So we have 3 distinguished guests with us today to talk regarding assessment here in the state. We have new 6-8 standards here in the state of Utah, right, that will be assessed for the first time this school year. You've heard Scott, if you've been to our meetings in science, you've heard Scott talk about them, the change from individual items to clusters and all these different things that hopefully you're aware of regarding science. But it's a pretty big shift from where we were, not only in what we're teaching in our classrooms, but also how we're assessing it. Now, we put together this panel to kind of help discuss in a way what happened with math when something similar happened with their standards a couple years back. So we have with us today Darren Nielsen, Assistant Superintendent of Schools here at the Utah State Board of Education. You're over assessment and teaching and learning. CT. Okay. We also have Scott Ross Kelly. He's the Science Assessment Specialist at the Utah State Board of Education. And we've also invited Sherry Hyder, who's the Curriculum Director, Assessment Director. Curriculum Specialist, Assessment Director. Fine. Curriculum Specialist. I'm fixing that right now. Oh, goodness, if I can type it. I can't even type it. Someone fix that for me. It's Curriculum Specialist, Assessment Director, and Secondary Math Specialist at the Weber School District. So I have prepared kind of 3 overall questions for them that we're going to go over today. If you have other questions that you would like to ask regarding this topic, regarding assessment in this area, or maybe even if we have time for in other areas, go ahead and write them here underneath in our questions and answer section. So I've shared these with them before. Hopefully they are not too scared by these questions, but we'll go on and get started. So our first question is, when there was a transition from CRT to SAGE and old to new Utah math standards, there was also a change in rigor with both instruction and state assessment. So what were the effects of these changes in the LEAs? I'm going to look at...
Gosh, no pressure here. Look right at me.
Go, Sherry, go.
So in our district, I think the change was super positive that our teachers began to teach more of a deep conceptual, rich understanding than just procedural knowledge, that algorithmic understanding and plug and chug. We moved away from that, which was wonderful, and increased the depth of knowledge that kids were being asked to perform on. So our kids have come out with a much better understanding of why we're doing what we're doing. The other thing that has been super positive in our district, we used to have kind of, under the old core, was a bit elitist. Our kids didn't understand the connection between algebra, geometry, data, statistics, probability, until they hit calculus. And that's a very, very limited group of students that make it that far. And so previously, students had seen all these disconnected little silos of mathematics, and the new core has fixed that. But it did call for a really intense change in our teachers' practices, and it's been good. What else would you like?
Well, the other thing I'll add is Darren Nielsen also, those of you who've known Darren for a long time, before he was here, he had a similar role to what Sherry did, with probably even more, but in Box Elder School District, you had so many different things you're doing. So anyways, you have a similar view as well. So you can
Yeah, and I would just, I think Sherry did a great job of explaining that. I'd just like to remind people as assessment, from assessment's perspective, assessment is just in place to support instruction, right? And I know there's accountability that's tied into it, but in reality, the assessment items are directly related to the core standards, which are designed to guide the instruction in the classroom. So when you introduce new standards, and this happened with ELA and math several years ago, obviously there's a lag when we talk about change in teacher practices. So you can adopt new standards that are simply different standards, or you can adopt new standards that require change in practice. And for ELA and math, that's true. In our most recent adoption for science, I think everyone associated with science, 6th, 7th, 8th grade would say that's also true there. So what we saw from an assessment perspective when we adopted new language arts and math standards, and then the associated assessment items that come with those, and then the rigor. So the standards then, as we adopted what we call college and career readiness standards, which were much different than the previous standards, are designed to measure whether students are on track to be college and career ready in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. And so we're telling parents, we're going to, I don't know if that, did that die?
I think it's still there.
We're telling parents that the data we're providing them is telling them whether their child's on track, and if they continue at the rate they're at, that they'll be ready to go to college or into a career when they leave our school system. With the change in rigor and also the lag that occurs with teaching, it's normal to expect, and we saw this in language arts and math, that proficiency scores drop, right? when you change the standards, you introduce more rigorous standards, and you change your assessment items. And so that's something that happened with language arts and math, and I think it's reasonable to expect that to happen with science as well as we move forward from a science perspective.
So from your experience, just on that, how drastic were some of those drops in the numbers? Like, what are the kind of things that we can expect specifically in our science standard assessments with these kind of changes?
Yeah, and I don't know that I'm qualified to say what we should fully expect with science, but with math and language arts, there were significant drops. In Box Elder School District, our language arts proficiency district-wide used to be 85, 86, 87%. When we adopted the new standards and the associated assessment questions that went with that, that dropped into the 40% range, right? And then we've seen a continual increase in the percent of students proficient up until this last year. And one of the other things I'll talk about later is related to this. We know that statewide accountability assessments have some other variables that have affected student scores that are beyond our control. But we've seen a steady increase in their proficiency, and that's related, I think, to the teaching practices that then change in correlation to the rigor of the standards. So
Weber District did see this a similar type of drop, not quite as drastic. We were about 25% as a drop from when we moved from CRT to SAGE. So it is pretty stark when you move from one assessment system to another and new standards. So I think would be expected. I don't know, Scott.
I don't know either. And I hate to make a prediction based on something that I really, even out in other states that have done a similar thing, we just don't know what's going to happen until we actually see it. And so it's kind of like, think of it like this, in science assessment, we are on the cutting edge of what's happening in this field right now. And what we see when it comes out is literally going to be the cutting edge of what's happening in science education. And so it's hard to make an accurate prediction on that, and I think it would be negligent on my part to try to make a prediction on that. But it would not be unexpected to see a drop.
But Scott,
we don't know.
How many other states in our nation that have adopted three-dimensional or K-12 framework-based standards have started any summative assessments?
Some have actually started. Hawaii started testing in this January, but we won't get the results back.
Oh.
And so none of the states that I'm aware of have actually had a full three-dimensional cluster-based science assessment.
So when you say cutting edge, you mean it. We're
literally we're going to be among the first states to do it this year. And so Connecticut is doing it this year. Kentucky is doing it this year. Washington and Oregon are involved. There's a lot of other states involved with a lot of the same stuff that we're going through. And we've been coordinating and working with them and trying to learn from them, and hopefully they've been learning from us. But we honestly don't know. Okay. We'll find out. This additional third dimension in science is an additional addition to rigor, to difficulty. Yeah,
psychometric analysis.
Yeah, it's going to be. I'm looking forward to it. I will say I'm excited about it. I came from a science background, and I've always felt that science education has lacked a level of rigor. I've always been disappointed when I hear teachers tell me they don't think kids can do it. My first year in the classroom, I did something in my classroom, and every science teacher in my department said, "We don't think kids can do that," but they did. And then a couple years later, they're all starting to incorporate it. And so we need to realize that our kids can do this. This is something that's very feasible, and we're not asking them to do anything we're not asking them to build a shuttle to the moon next week. We're asking them to do good, solid-based, research-based science in the classroom.
Perfect. Okay, next question for the panel. How can LEAs best prepare for and message potential changes coming with new science assessments?
So in our district, right when those science practice cluster tests came out, I wrote up a little document that walked everybody through it, messaged all of our science teachers, admins, everybody else, and it kind of led them through exactly how to launch one of those tests. And then I went to all the junior highs and walked our 7-8 science teachers through them. And I'll tell you what, once they saw them, life changed for them. So it was a totally different mentality. And I honestly don't think that they were quite prepared for what they saw in those cluster assessments. So it has really changed what's going on in our district, but every one of our 7 and 8 teachers have seen them personally. The others have had different leaders go out and help 6th grade folks so that everyone has been able to experience those practice clusters. In training of all of my testing aides who live at each of the buildings, they also now have been instructed. I showed all of them the science practice cluster assessments, and they are now going back and making sure that kids are having the opportunity to participate in those. We feel it's super important to give kids that opportunity to see those, to learn how to interact with them, so that although we predict a drop in scores, we're certainly not going to convey that to kids, right? We're going to walk in with the kids and say, hey, you're going to do your very best. You're prepared for this. Life is good. But one of the ways we can make sure they're prepared is by giving them the chance to practice with those cluster assessments. The other thing that we did find just in practice in our district, there's 2 in grade 6, 1 in grade 7, and 2 in grade 8. And we found that there was a little bit of overlap in content. So even if you're a 7th grade teacher, you may want to look at some of the others that may help guide you. So anyway, huge positive thing from the SSECC system with helping our kids and teachers.
Yeah, and there's a lot you can do to help your teachers. I'm always surprised when I talk to teachers who are new to this that they're not involved with the Utah Science Teacher Association, and they've never been to one of those conferences, because they've been a huge support in terms of professional learning that teachers can get. UEN has got a content site set up where teachers can go and get content-based knowledge if they feel like they're lacking in that content. There are free courses they can take there for that. There are a lot of opportunities online, even with webinars that are happening across the country with this new 3D-based learning that teachers can take advantage of and can get involved with, but they need to be pointed to those sites a lot of times. I know as a science teacher myself, boy, joining the National Science Teacher Association, that was money out of my pocket that I really could have used. But they have also got a lot of webinars and seminars and conferences that are happening, including a conference that's coming here to Utah soon, where our teachers can go and learn about 3D-based instruction and what people are doing for that. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. We just need to make sure they're aware of those.
You know, and I would just, my mind went to how do you prepare? Well, the preparation started quite a while ago, and in Box Elder School District, it started at Thanksgiving Point when Brett Molding came in, and we brought specialists down and trained the trainer model, and we worked with Cache School District to provide a full year PD. Because again, the assessment is designed to support the instructional process and identify whether students are learning the standards or not. And so focusing on the standards and the instructional practices associated with that are really the best way to prepare and to try to make sure we have a balance in our emotional response. I used to work with students that had test anxiety, and I would always start out with, nowadays students don't know this, but the emergency broadcasting system used to do tests, right? And you'd be watching TV or listening to the radio, get that annoying sound. This is just a test. This is, if it were a real emergency, you know, the following things would have happened. And the reason they do that is because that allows them to make changes based on the results of the test. And really, I used to work with students. I said, there's really no test you take in high school that's the real emergency. You know, it might feel like it to you, but it's just a test, and put it in the right context. Use the results from the test to make improvements and changes, both individually and programmatically. At the state level, it's good to remember this is an operational field test year, so the data that when the students take the test and they hit the submit button, there will not be an automatic score that will be posted like there is in math and language arts for most students. And that's because a lot of the processes to develop the integrity and make sure we have the test is measuring what it's supposed to measure happens throughout the following months. So we will not actually get scores back for the 6th, 7th, 8th grade science until the end of October. And again, that's because we need to evaluate the responses in the data. And that's another important concept for teachers in the field and students to know that and understand that.
So one other thing that our district has done, and it was the brainchild of our district science specialist, and it turned out fabulously. Last spring, so you know the new standards are coming in, you want to prepare your teachers. He was able to build district level professional learning communities based around the new standards. And he's building this cadre of, we're referring to them as teacher fellows, but basically about 3 to 4 experts in each grade level. And then they bring folks together twice a month and it's just open entry. Anybody who's in 6th grade can come and participate in that PLC. But 3 to 4 experts in each grade level that we're paying a small stipend to go work with these teachers individually, because one person can't do it. But they've been meeting twice a month since last spring to go over content and really make sure that they're aware of the pedagogical changes that need to occur and that they're okay with the actual content, the teaching content, because some of them were not. So luckily we've had just about a year that we've been able to do that, and that's going to continue regardless. So that's a great way to leverage your teachers and use the PLC concept.
So can I ask really just another, along these lines, a specific question regarding messaging, right? Like what do LEAs need to do to let parents know in advance? Because, for example, we had at a recent board meeting, someone came in and tried to talk about the downside, like these standards, they're not helping kids by showing, I think it was a report that said after kids took a Rhode Island test that the scores were so bad, they're just not learning. And they make these interpretations. So what can we do to message this in advance? So we're showing that this is just a change in rigor. This isn't saying that these standards are not necessarily effective, right? So what kind of messaging can we do there in advance to help our parents?
And to help the teachers. The biggest message we've got also is this is a baseline year. And so if you're looking at last year's results and trying to compare them to this year's results, it's not an apples and apples comparison. It's a baseline year with new standards and a new type of assessment, and so it's a new starting point. And so that's where you start, is comparing to previous years in terms of that. Just really isn't something you want to do. It's not a fair comparison.
You know, the other thing that's important to remember is that the standards have become college and career readiness standards, and that's different than the standards I grew up with as a student. It's different than the standards most of their parents grew up with, right? The goal was just to teach these basic elements, and then you'd worry about the college career readiness later, or maybe in high school you separate out on different tracks. But so that's one difference that's important to remember. The other thing that I don't know how you message this, but it's important for us to understand in education is I think we all understand we can take a test and we can write it in a way that most students can pass it, right? We can make the questions designed in a way that it's easier to be successful. And there are states in our country who write their assessments and set their thresholds, their proficiency thresholds, such that a high number of students are proficient according to those criteria. There's a website called the honestygap.org, and they've identified Utah in a 2016 report, which I think is their most recent, maybe it was 2015, as the most honest state in the country based on their math and language arts. So after we changed to the more rigorous standards, and our teachers helped set those thresholds, the proficiency thresholds, Utah was identified as the most honest state. And what they're saying is they looked at all the states across the country and how many students they claim are proficient in various content areas, and then they looked at the NAEP, which is our only nationally normed reference that allows us to compare ourselves to one another across state lines. And the percent of students who are deemed proficient by our state system in math and language arts is highly correlated, more than any other state in the country, with the percent of students who are deemed proficient on the NAEP test. And this website is designed to try to help highlight that some state agencies mislead the parents, mislead the stakeholders by misreporting the number of students that are proficient. So just the fact that a number of students proficient changes, there's a lot more complexities to that than just saying, oh, kids aren't as smart as they used to be, or we're not doing as good a job teaching in the classroom as we used to do. So those are some elements to this conversation that are important for us to be able to have with our stakeholders.
Also, we did put out a parent, Ricky and I put out a parent handout that you can send to parents, teachers, stakeholders. We need to refresh some of the links on that because the links have changed on that, but I can take it on my listserv and send that out if you're on my listserv to everyone, because that was approved by the leadership here at USBE, and it's something that you can send to your parents, you can send home with kids, you can email around the world and let people know about our new standards and how they're being taught and how they're going to be assessed. That was all put together in a very nice comprehensive pamphlet handout for people to take and use.
So we have appreciated that. We've actually shared that out far and wide, which it's been awesome. So we've actually relied on three things. One is our teachers to communicate this to students and their families about this being a baseline year, and just go show what you know, basically. The second is we're building a communication for parents as we approach the SAGE testing season on doing your very best, trying to use this as a way to let teachers help you with what you don't know, fill those gaps, allow for enrichment opportunities. And then the third piece, so in that letter, there is a segment that talks about if your child's in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade science, here's what you might expect, and just, be aware of these things. The third piece is I publish all of our students' ISRs, the individual student reports, on the parent portal and on our teacher student information system. And so with every time there's a new change in an assessment, there's a cover letter that goes with it that explains why these scores might look a little bit different than what you've seen before, so that as parents open up that report, in October or whenever the case may be, that before they actually see the report, they'll see this cover letter explaining to them again why this might look different than what they've seen on their child in the past.
We had a question over here, but I don't know if we answered it.
I wrote it in the comments as well, so I'm particularly concerned about teachers who are in turnaround and whose data is appropriately or not really connected to their professional identity, their ability to stay at their school, whatever. Has there been a targeted outreach effort to their admin to help admin understand how to interpret these scores?
Not that I'm personally aware of, no. There has not been a targeted outreach like that. We've tried to focus on, we talked about equity earlier today, about making sure that everyone can access this, and we have actually changed the way we develop the items in science. Previously it was just science teachers that came out for that. We had math and English teachers on the writing teams to make sure we were hitting the right lexile and math ability, but we also had special ed teachers on the teams to make sure that we're looking at accessibility for our special ed kids, and we had a couple of people from Title I schools that were there to making sure we were paying attention to that. I think the success came when we got to our content and bias reviews. We only lost 2 clusters to all those reviews because we were aligning to where we needed to do for that. So in terms of development, we've watched that, but we have not targeted a message specifically to administrators.
Okay. There are some questions here. The first one is, are there specific tips we can give to worried teachers to help them feel more confident about the new science assessment model? For example, do we tell them to emphasize and identify science practices as they perform them with their students?
Maybe. I don't like to give a lot of tips out because a lot of times when the people are asking me for tips, like I had someone ask me, they wanted me to give out a practice cluster for every one of our standards. And I was like, well, that would be, you mean you're going to use that to teach the test, and I'd prefer not to do that. I want to have you be able to show students what the test is like, how it operates, how the different item types work, not have you be able to see how your kids are going to do on each individual standard. Eventually, we will get to somewhere near that when we have benchmark and interim tests developed, when the banks get big enough. The best focus I've seen is what I learned my first year in the classroom with my mentor teacher. Make sure you're teaching the standards. And so if you're teaching the science and engineering practices, if you're teaching the cross-cutting concepts within that realm of content that's built into your standards, your students should do very well. I don't know what else to say.
Next one.
Yeah, and that's one thing. A lot of teachers.
I mean,
they
Yep.
have to come to the table with core ideas.
They do. And that's something that the way our standards were written, that the core ideas are not specifically spelled out, but there are a lot of crosswalks out there that point to what exactly those core ideas are. And I've run into a lot of surprise in the presentation I've given, and even in our writing workshops, when we point the teachers to the disciplinary core ideas, they're surprised that this is the first time I'm seeing these. Well, we talk about them, but the standard itself is not the disciplinary core idea. And so they need to at least be aware of that.
Okay. Next question was, can anyone access the practice clusters? How and where? Can we share them? Is there a link? And someone's actually, I don't know who's Anonymous Rabbit, but thank you, you're putting it in.
Yes.
Go Rabbits.
The practice clusters?
So yeah, so it's done. I shouldn't have even read that one. So that one, the answer is there, available on the shared notes. How is USBE communicating to admin regarding baseline perspective, particularly for schools in turnaround? Oh, that's the question that you just asked, Jess.
Yep.
So that one's been asked. Can we get access to the parent letter? And we'll post that here.
Yes,
as soon
we'll
as
give
we
access to that. Like I said, a couple of the links have changed on the samples. I put that out on my listserv, but the sample site, the website address has changed a little bit, but they're still there. And we want to make sure that it's linked appropriately before we send it out again.
Okay. Final word from the panelists before we'll have one final thing for Darren, but anything left? No? Good, Sherry?
Yeah, I love hearing Darren. Darren's awesome.
Darren's got our final word. Plus, also, we asked Darren to spend some time. There was a one-time conversation between the board and rules regarding using the SAGE test for grades and for grading purposes in the classroom. There are things happening there, and before I talk too much more, I'll just let you go with it, Darren.
All right. Yeah, so just to kind of walk us back through what's happened over the last couple of months. On January 4th, our Board of Education made an amendment to Rule 277404. And they made a few amendments, but the part that has caused the most questions to come into assessment is this language. In accordance with subsection 53G, blah, 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 an LEA shall reasonably accommodate a parent or guardian's request to allow a student's demonstration of proficiency on a state-required assessment to fulfill a requirement in a course. And so that was passed, and then it opens a 30-day public comment period before it becomes official rule. But we started talking about this with assessment directors, I think, right in January. About this change because it seemed significant to us in assessment. I started to draft a document that could be used as either a frequently asked question or a guiding document because immediately after the January 4th meeting, because I was in the LEA as recently as the last week in October, my responsibilities in Bucks Shoulder School District. So trying to picture how I would communicate this to the field caused me to have a lot of questions myself. So I started drafting this document, and then when you work at the state agency, especially when you're new, trying to figure out how do you function, how do you operate, and it became clear to me that I didn't have the authority or the ability to send that document out because I represent a board of 15 state school board members. And so when I send something out, it needs to be approved by them, right? And so I prepared this document. I contacted a couple board members, sat down with them, got some good revisions and editing. Now remember, an individual board member by themselves is not the same as a full board. The full board has full authority over the educational system in the state of Utah. And at that point, I realized I needed to take this document to the board. So it got put on the agenda for the March board meeting, which is next week, to go before Standards Assessment Committee. I've since been directed to pull that off of the board meeting with the direction that they would like to have this kind of information put into the other documentation we've got on testing ethics, because it's related a little bit to ethics, right? It's one of the reasons we have so many questions. Just to give you a little feel of where I was going with this document, though, which won't be released, but we'll be updating our testing ethics policy. Part of the questions that I had as an individual was, well, we have Utah code that talks about, it says this, Utah Code 53E4303 says, a student's score on a standards a standard assessment adopted under subsection 2 may not be considered in determining the student's academic grade for a course or whether the student may advance to the next grade level. And then we have board rules that could be viewed as contradictory to the amendment. It's 404-7, so in that same rule says an LEA may not penalize a student who's exempted from a state-required assessment. While I personally don't believe a grade is related to a penalty or a reward, there are some that make that case. And an LEA may not reward a student for a student's participation in or performance of a state-required assessment. The third part of this has to do with the parental rights statute in Utah Code, Utah Code 53G6803. It says a few things that are related to this. It says a student's parent or guardian is the primary person responsible for the education of the student, and the state is in a secondary supportive role to the parent guardian. It says that parents, among other rights, have the right to reasonable academic accommodations from the student's LEA and shall allow a student to earn course credit towards high school graduation without completing a course in school by testing out of the course or demonstrating competency. Or demonstrating competency in course standards. And so this document that I started to draft was to try to highlight this juxtaposition between what appear to be conflicting rules, right? R277404 has been put back on board agenda, and I don't know the intention of that, but it's going to be discussed at Standards and Assessment Committee next Friday. And I'll be there to discuss that. It'll be recorded and streamed, and so if any of you, most of you probably don't have time on Friday morning to view this. You'll be busy in the classrooms or in your LEAs, but it'll be available to. Yes, you can. If you're available to come and to support. My personal feeling is, based on the questions that I've received and also feedback I've received directly from LEAs after this amendment was made, is that there's strong support across the state for that amendment. That many teachers, certainly not all, there's nothing we can say all to anymore, but many teachers saw that amendment as an opportunity to make meaningful a test that otherwise many students believe doesn't have any personal meaning or relevance to them. I've even received, which is highly unusual at this level, a phone call with a expression of gratitude by a teacher in the state, a science teacher specifically, saying thank you for this. And I had to say, well, it's not me. The board is the one who's trying to leverage and allow you as a teacher to find more value in this assessment for your students. We know, can I say we know? I know, and many believe that the opt-out provision that's allowed in the state of Utah undermines the benefit of statewide assessment system in the classroom. And then certainly some of these rules that take away a teacher's ability to use the data that they get back from the statewide assessment to determine proficiency on individual standards or otherwise, those are barriers to success for the system. And I believe that many on the board believe that too, and I think you'll see continued effort to make that available, to make some changes within their authority, because remember, two of those codes I read, those are state laws, so they're legislative changes that would have to happen. And then the board, within their scope, they have some things that they have some authority over that they could either ease or change to allow statewide assessment to be more meaningful for students. So I'm disappointed that I don't have more to say about this, more explicit things I can say about this, but I do want you to know that I personally believe the board, many members of the board do want to make decisions that allow statewide assessment to have more meaning to the instructional process.
Perfect.
Does that sound accurate?
That sounds perfect.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to thank our panelists. We can give them a quick round of applause. If there are additional questions regarding this and other matters, please contact Scott or Darren or me or whatever. And we now invite up our next step as we kind of clear the road. Sarah Young is going to be here. She is here. I'll pass over my mic of greatness. Sarah's going to talk to us about, according to hers.
She's very distinguished.
So this is Sarah, and she's cool. I'm just kidding.
Thank you. That was awesome. I appreciate the professional introduction.
Sarah Young has been a member of the Utah State Board of Education team for now over 6 years. She started here as the K-12 science specialist, moved to the STEM Action Center as the STEM liaison between both offices, and now is the coordinator over digital teaching and learning. She does amazing stuff. We're so grateful to have her back, and especially, I don't know, I like having her around. But
All right, here we go. So I have to set my timer because otherwise I go over every single time. So I'm giving myself less time so I can answer questions at the end. Is there a clicker? Should I just, oh, perfect. You're on top of it. All right, so thank you so much for having me. Like he said, I'm Sarah Young, coordinator for digital teaching and learning. Gotta be honest, science people, you will always be my family. Ricky is so awesome about the leadership and the work that he does that he's nice enough to let me sneak into science events and be like, I missed you all, in regards to what that looks like. So super excited to be here today to talk to you about the state of Utah technology. Let's talk about assessment. Just kidding. So what we are going to be going over today is kind of in terms of digital teaching and learning, the why, the what, the when, and then today and tomorrow in regards to just giving you a context of what the environment looks like here across the state of Utah. So I have a question for all of you because I'm a science person and we like questions here. What is different about your life since you acquired a cell phone? Take 10 seconds to think about it. And you have 1 minute to turn to the person next to you and let them know what's different about your life since you got a cell phone. Right, 30 more seconds. It's halfway through. All right, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So just so you know, that works so well. Even as an adult, I get anxiety. I'm like, oh my gosh, something's counting down. What am I going to do? Anyway, so I think it's important to note you chose technology, okay? Nobody forced you to have a cell phone. You made a choice to be able to bring technology into your world. And there was a reason behind it, okay? Something was the impetus for you to make that decision, to say, I'm going to choose to bring technology into my world. And looking around, it seems like many of you have taken further steps in regards to not just a cell phone. Maybe you have a cell phone. Now you have a Chromebook. Now you have a tablet. Some of you have 3 phones. I'm looking around. That's okay. We don't judge. But you are choosing to bring that in, okay? And my question for you is, what is your why? Why? Why are you doing that? Okay, we have a space where you can write down your reasoning. This slide set should be linked into your Google Doc. It's helpful to take a moment to explain what's your why. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to go ahead and try and access that link to put in why. Why are you choosing technology, and to have a chance to see what others in the room are thinking. You have 30 seconds. Here we go. If you're unfamiliar with Padlet, once it comes up, all you got to do is double click on the screen. There's no login, there's no secret security code, and then you can post your comment. You can click on top. All right, as you're entering your why and kind of seeing some of the other folks' whys, I think it's important to have that moment of personal reflection about why you've chosen technology. Because when we're talking about the role of technology in terms of education, it is the exact same question that you have to answer before you start asking and bringing technology into the K-12 space. So if you're going to say, hey, I love STEM, I think we should use technology to be able to enhance our instruction in these different areas, you have to answer the question why. That is important to your principals, it's important to your teachers, it is important to your parents, and it is even important to your kids. Why are you asking me to use technology to be able to achieve these outcomes? So it's worthwhile to think about your why. Now, to give you an encouragement to think about what's my why? Why do we bring these opportunities into K-12 and invest resources in this space? I will give you a Twitter challenge. So by the end of the day, and it has to be the end of today because we're coming up close, we're asking for your tweet vision. So basically 280 characters or a hyperlink if you need more, and you can be technology savvy in that way, to talk to me about why you think technology is necessary in a K-12 space. So we've asked you to tag me so that I can find you and I'm not searching you out, as well as DTL Utah. And we will randomly choose one of you to be able to select a teacher leader from your space to be able to come to USET on the 22nd and the 23rd, and we will scholarship them. If you are over 100 miles away, we will pay for their hotel and mileage. So just a thought, this will come up again at the end, but be thinking about as we go through today's presentation, the why. So technology in the classroom can really break down currently into 3 separate categories. I'm going to go through each of those categories and try and differentiate how they're not the same. Okay, so the first one that I have to address whenever we talk about technology, there's this huge fear that technology is going to replace our teachers. That all of a sudden it's going to be like, yeah, you don't even have to come to school. You can just get on technology. And I will tell you that that is not a vision for technology in the K-12 space. Technology is a resource in the exact same way that you purchase textbook and materials and manipulatives for your classroom. It is meant to enhance instruction, not to replace instruction. And we're super clear on that here at the Utah State Board of Education and are happy to clarify that for stakeholders who think the opposite. The first one I'm going to address is digital learning. So I'm the coordinator of digital teaching and learning. So it's important that that's kind of a good broad category to start with. Here we're really talking about instructional practices that effectively use technology to strengthen a student's learning experience. The key word here is effectively, okay? It's not just to use technology, it has to be effective in strengthening the student's learning experience. And that's really the key around digital learning and the efforts that we're making here in Utah. I like to highlight the SAMR model. Just a quick show of hands. How many of you are familiar with the SAMR model? Few of us? Okay, so I'm going to take a quick moment just to highlight the idea. This is a really good model or kind of framework in which to look at the use of technology and what's happening in a classroom. So SAMR is stands for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. So substitution is going to be a really low-level use of technology. So an example would be, instead of writing my English paper, I'm actually going to type it in a word processor, okay? Really, I'm just substituting one for another. And when we're doing substitution, I got to be honest, the dollars are not in favor of technology, because I can get paper and a pencil for a heck of a lot cheaper than I can get a Chromebook and access to a word processor. So substitution, although surface level and a really great entry point for teachers, ultimately doesn't achieve the outcomes we want to see in digital teaching and learning. Augmentation is where technology is a direct substitute, but it does have functional improvements. So back to my example, if I'm writing an English paper, now by using technology, I have a text-to-speech option or speak to text, pardon me, that allows me to be able to interact with it in a different way than I could before. And so now I'm getting some enhancement, but I'm still ultimately really achieving kind of the same outcomes. And that's what we look at for the first two, substitution and augmentation, as enhancements. Where we get into transformation and the higher order levels of using technology, we start to see modification. So modification allows for a significant redesign of task. So maybe instead of just writing up my paper and using a text-to-speech function to be able to allow me to do that, now I have the opportunity to share it in a blog or maybe a Google document and to be getting input from peers as I'm writing it to be able to do iterations. That's an important step because I couldn't necessarily do that with my piece of paper in a way that's time sensitive and effective for me to be able to make those edits on the fly. And that's where we start to see some of those improvement components. Last but not least is redefinition. And this is where we see technology being used to really redefine a task that was previously not conceivable without the use of technology. So back to my English paper, maybe instead of making an English paper, now all of a sudden I have the chance to make a multimedia-based presentation that has a lot more elements and allows for a lot more creative activity from the students to be able to demonstrate their learning beyond just our normal, I've got 5 paragraphs speaking about here's my, introduction, my 3 components of evidence, and my conclusion. This is ultimately where we want to see technology happening in the K-12 space, but it does take some scaffolding to be able to get there. Most teachers, it's not feasible to say to them, I expect you to hand you a set of Chromebooks or a Chromebook cart and to be able to say, okay, great, now I'm going to totally redefine everything I do in the classroom. And that's why SAMR's helpful in terms of walking them through, taking steps that direction, and really bridging that gap. Next one I'm going to talk about outside of digital learning is blended learning. So blended learning is different because this is where we're talking about a formal education program that leverages technology as at least part of the time for student learning. So it does still have brick and mortar, but oftentimes extends the classroom away from the traditional 4 walls and the traditional school day, allowing opportunities to learn in different ways that may provide opportunities in terms of path, pace, as well as place in regards to those modifications. For blended learning, it also offers opportunities associated with accessing different learning modalities. So sometimes as a teacher, when I was in science, I had to make a decision about, okay, I've got my classroom of kids and I'm gonna need to offer different kind of learning modalities. So today we'll do kinesthetic learning, but then tomorrow we're gonna do textual evidence. And then the next day, we're going to provide them with some reflection opportunities and peer work. Okay, that was a day-by-day thing, but ultimately all of my kids had to experience the same thing. They just got different ways to access the information. By using blended learning, we're starting at saying, okay, so instead of me forcing you to all do these 3 different modalities, is there a way I can leverage technology and blended learning so that in the same classroom, in the same space, I can facilitate the kinetic piece as well as the opportunity for kids to work in peer groups, as well as kids to be able to do a direct kind of textual evidence component all within the same space, like I couldn't necessarily do before. So for blended learning, I'm going to highlight 4 quick models that are Clayton Christensen's models of blended learning, specific to the rotation model. So if you're looking at blended learning, what could that possibly look like in the classroom? And if you want more on these models, they're linked within the slide set, so you can go in and get additional details. The first is station rotation. So station rotation really just focuses on having technology as a station within a classroom. Makes perfect sense. So that basically you're rotating kids through having some sort of engagement within the 4 walls of the classroom with technology, where they may be all accessing the same program and the same content and curriculum, but you also can rotate them through having group work that's available with a teacher, as well as moving into some peer-based work as well. We see this happening a lot in our elementary classrooms where technology is limited in regards to there's just not enough devices for all the kiddos. The second one is a lab rotation. So this one's going to be more along the lines of still within the constructs of a school building, but allowing teachers to be able to kind of trade. So I'm going to have like one of my classrooms working in a digital learning space, accessing content, having that opportunity to be able to start building my expertise, maybe looking at primary documents or evidence-based resources or looking at things like nasa.gov, because that's what I do all day. And then flipping that with saying, now I'm going to come back to the classroom and have a teacher-based instructional opportunity. So pairing those two items together to be able to give them, you know, learning time that's on their own self-agency, but also that's directed by the teacher. We also have the flipped classroom, which you hear a lot about, but is another example of blended learning. So this is the idea that a student will go home and have an opportunity to engage in some sort of learning experience and then come to the classroom, and in the classroom is where they're actually going to do the application. So an example would be, instead of me coming to class and sitting there and getting a lecture about the moon phases and then going home and having to color in a worksheet, you know, corresponding to those pieces, now all of a sudden I have the opportunity to learn about the moon phases through some online opportunities with digital content and modeling. And when I come to the classroom, then I have opportunities to work with my peers based on the learning that I did the night before to be able to move in. A lot of people say, like, this one's not feasible because we can't guarantee that our kids go home and are actually doing the learning. And then as a teacher, I end up just repeating everything in class. I would liken that to my college experience where they assigned us textbook readings, but I never did them because every time I showed up in lecture, they just covered it all anyway. And so I think that there are some opportunities there and that we can build into it, and that this actually isn't as far off from what a lot of our teachers do with our kiddos as one might think. Last but not least is the flex model. So this one is super fun, but this one is really more so delving into that personalized learning, where each of your kids is going to have access to technology, and so they have opportunities to be moving more so at their own personalized pace. So they may be working on different content areas and diving into different amounts of depth, and then engaging with each other in group work and the teacher in different ways throughout the course of the day. The other thing about the flex model is that it oftentimes allows for more student agency in terms of being able to decide, I really love this subject and I want to go deeper into it and kind of delve into those areas, versus kids who are saying, I've met the requirements in regards to what this content is, and I'm going to move on to study something that's more in alignment with my passion. Last but not least, personalized learning. So personalized learning I touched on briefly in turn in the blended models, but this is where we talk about really getting down to a student's personalized level in regards to what's going to meet the individual need of the student. Folks, this is highly, I would say 99% impossible without the role of technology being involved. And I say that because I think all of us realize the power that would happen if we had one teacher for every one kid. That would be amazing, because you could go in and be like, perfect, what do you need and what can we work on and how can we work through that? And that's the idea of personalized learning, but doing it, you leveraging technology to be able to achieve those outcomes. So personalized learning has a bunch of elements. I'm going to touch on them quickly. The first one is student agency. That's a shift, okay? Many of our individual educators and our students, are in a sit and get mode, that they roll into class and they're like, you tell me what I need to know and I'm just going to trust you on that, versus shifting it to say, what do you need? I'm asking you to be able to perform this task. So what do you need to be able to get there in terms of being able to build that process? Differentiated instruction is also important. You can't just have this is the single linear path that I've built for you. There has to be differentiation in terms of if you have a kid who's really excelling and you have a kid who maybe needs some interventions in regards to having different opportunities in that. Instructional and interventions, we kind of touched on that. Flexible pacing, again, a huge shift in the world of education. I know every single person in this room, including myself, has had a curriculum map before where it's like, it's February the 12th and I am going to be teaching this standard and we're doing this lesson and here's what I'm doing. And so giving a little more flexibility, not just in terms of what the teacher's doing, but also what the kids are working on to better meet their needs. Student profiles are really important. One of the key elements of personalized learning is having a personalized learning plan. It's important that the kids, to enable that self-agency, have to know what the targets are, and they have to know where they are in regards to those targets. And so you can't just say, like, I really want you to learn more about ecosystems. Ready, go. There has to be some sort of an accountability piece that's transparent to the student, the teacher, and the parents. Deeper learning and problem solving to develop meaning, frequent feedback from instructors and peers, and standards-based world-class knowledge skills, project-based learning portfolios, etc. I bring these items up because sometimes with personalized learning, we shift all the way to it's all just going to be on a computer and I'm just going to sit there for like 8 hours a day. It always reminds me of one of the newer Star Wars where they have all the clones sitting in front of the computers being like, and I'm like, no, that is not what we want, okay? We are still talking about these in terms of incorporating these things, and if anything, giving more time for these experiences with the enhanced flexibility of the model. So you have 30 seconds to consider what is happening in your school. These are not the same things, digital, personalized, blended. What is currently happening in your school? Just a moment to reflect. And now I want you to turn to the person next to you and you have 30 seconds. What do you want to be happening in your school? I will be clear, I do not think all three of these together or even any two or one is going to be appropriate for every single school. Think about your resources, think about your teachers, think about your needs, and have a 1-minute discussion about what you want. We have 5 more minutes. I'm killing it. I'm like, I did this in an hour last time, so here we go.
Watch me cut it.
Did you hear? Yeah. Did you hear? TTL got an additional $10 million ongoing. We are up to 20K ongoing funds for LE. You know, out of nowhere, last 90 minutes of the session came out in bill of bills. I wasn't even looking for it. I was just looking for learn.
That was the senator's last hurrah after he's like, and I'm out.
When I saw, no, it wasn't, because he would have been like, I refuse. Because he's, oh yeah.
Seems to be back on the table. I don't see a cut anywhere in the bill of bills or in Senate Bill 2 that says a negative 225 anymore.
Well, sweet. Done. I would say then it's still there. I have to ask Natalie for her interpretation anyway. All right. 15 seconds. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ta-da. See, I made fun of it the first time, so now none of you are listening to me. That's totally fine. Okay. So what is the state of Utah doing to support these efforts? All right, we've kind of touched on a bunch of different models. So I think it's important to know about what the folks here at USBE that I have the pleasure of working with, as well as across the community, are doing. So educational technology has been a commitment from the state of Utah in regards to resources dating well back in time, but with the first large initiative back in 1990, which was the Educational Technology Initiative, or the ETI. That's where they provided $15 million, and it actually crossed over into colleges who were doing training opportunities associated with new teachers to make sure technology was going to be a part of their fluency in regards to instruction. Then we had a best practices component evaluation of that in 2005. In 2008, we introduced Upstart, which is the online preschool program. I like to point out that that program, which is a blended model, both parent and child, prior to entering kindergarten, sitting down and working together, currently serves over 12,000 4-year-olds right now in the state of Utah. So if you're thinking to yourself, like, yeah, technology, this sounds great, Sarah, but we're not going to get there, those kids are your kindergartners next year. So not only do they expect to have these opportunities and experiences, but their parents do as well. So just to keep that in mind. We do have the Early Intervention Software Program, which focuses on literacy, that's run here through the State Board of Education. We also have the STEM Action Center's math opportunities. And last but not least, we have Digital Teaching and Learning, which is the program that I run, which is a qualified grant that's available to all LEAs. We currently have 40 out of 41 districts participating. So let's jump into quickly what that is. You have to create a plan that's approved by the State Board. Many of you may be like, wait a minute, do I have a plan? And the answer is you do, if you are in 40 out of the 41 districts. So it's helpful to know, what is our plan? What's our focus? There are many of the plans, I would say over half of them, focus on math and or science. So it's worthwhile to go in there and be like, wait a minute, people are bringing technology into our spaces and like maybe I don't know about it or haven't had the opportunity to give input. You can, and it's here. And because we're digital teaching and learning, we run the plans as interactive documents. So there is flexibility for LEAs to go in and make changes to their plans based on their existing needs and some of the data that they're gathering. It's a great way to catch the vision, but I present this to all of you for both math and science in regards to saying that you oftentimes are strapped for resources. Folks, we've got resources in digital teaching and learning, and this is a great opportunity to make sure your voice is at the table as those resources are being allocated to make sure it fits in with your vision for best instruction for the kiddos. Speaking of involved, things to consider when you see technology in the classroom. I always like to give these tips and tricks as you're out visiting with your teachers and your coaches. Are kids using technology, or is the teacher using technology? We tend to have a pretty big gap in regards to what that is, where a teacher's like, I use technology all the time because I use it to take attendance every day. And you're like, nope, not what we're going for. Like, I appreciate that, yay for you, but not really what our vision is. You are looking in those classrooms for kids engaging with technology. Is it substitution or something more in regards to the SAMR model? If it's something they could do, but without a piece of technology, then you have probably overinvested in your technology in regards to what the true needs are in the classroom. If you're purchasing things along those lines, you want to see them being used to enhance instruction, not just to replace what we had before. What's the role of the teacher? So one of the shifts that we see in regards to a lot of these models, both digital learning, personalized learning, and blended learning, is that the teacher is scaffolding learning experiences. So instead of doing what I'm doing for you, see, luckily, I said I gave myself 4 extra minutes because I know I run long. So we're okay. But are they scaffolding these experiences, or are they just delivering content and then saying, now go and enter your journal article in your Google Chromebook, in which case, again, we're not necessarily seeing technology leverage to enhance instruction. How is technology supportive of good pedagogy? Again, we have a really wonderful policymaker who has very good intentions, but sometimes has missed the boat with us. And as a part of that, this individual talks about, I walk into these computer labs and there's 40 kids who have their headphones on, who are working with the screen, and they're silent. And that's just so amazing. And every time I hear that, my heart like dies a little more. And I'm like, no. We are not expecting that good pedagogy goes out the window in lieu of technology. It should be there to support and enhance what we expect to see in regards to our teachers. And is there noise? I think that's a good thing. Clearly, by my personality and presenting, you could see why. But it's important to note that technology doesn't mean headphones and silence. It should be collaborative. Some of the best models we see around how to use technology to actually improve student learning is to put 2 kids on 1 device so that they're dialoguing and working together in a I'm driving and you're navigating kind of mode, and be able to have dialogue about what we're doing together. Is learning improved? Also important, and ultimately the key of what we're going for in digital teaching and learning. So this is always fun. What should kids do with technology? Prezzies, make videos, Edmodo, and the answer is no. That's actually not what we're going for. We really are looking to raise awareness, start conversations, find answers, join partners, change minds, make a difference, take action, and drive change. Technology is not a tool. It's a tool, not the learning outcome. I will highlight that coming up here, we have USET, which is what we're offering to sponsor you too if you do a tweet. In regards to attendance, this is a great space. It's run by the Utah Coalition of Educational Technology, which are education leaders from here in Utah. You will see teachers talking about what they're doing from across the subject areas and across the grade levels to be able to enhance learning opportunities for their kids. For your principals, UEN is hosting a free, and this is only for principals, Leading Schools Summit that also focuses on these opportunities. So not only do you have opportunities for teachers and district leaders to be able to learn about it, but your principals as well have an institute that they can come to in the summer, again, free through UEN to be able to participate. Back in my day, I think it's important to know that when we talk about technology, iteration is really, really important. When I first got my phone, it was really scary because I didn't even know how to dial because I was used to a flip phone, and now I had the smart screen and there were all these buttons, and I was like, I don't even know like where to start with this. And we look at that in regards to what we're doing with technology moving forward. If you like innovation and change, this is it, folks, because it doesn't stop. So you never get to a space where you're like, my technology is good. Phew, I'm done. Okay. You have to be prepared for the fact that it's constantly evolving. And if you're from science, you should be down with that. In regards to predictive analytics, this is the last thing that I'll leave you with. Predictive analytics is really something that technology offers that's different than a lot of the instructional materials you may be familiar with. I always reflect back on my early days with Oregon Trail, and that it was like, this is great, Oregon Trail, like grueling pace, Betsy died, dysentery. I'm okay with that because I'm going to get to the Gold Coast first. Anyway, as part of that, it was very like, okay, everyone's doing the exact same program over and over, and the teachers would drop us off and kind of be like, okay, enjoy, but there really wasn't a learning expected outcome there. It was more so like, sweet, I can go to lunch early, or maybe have an opportunity for my PLC. Predictive analytics takes technology a step forward, and is really the use of data to be able to run algorithms to better meet students' needs in a way we haven't been able to before. So kind of the model quickly is we collect data, we clean data. In cleaning data, you have hindsight. Then you can identify patterns. That gives you insight in regards to what's going on. But predictive analytics takes us a step forward using the patterns to have foresight, to predict where our kids are going in regards to what their needs are based on their patterns and their trends before. So how does this change education? Well, I always like to reflect on the fact, does Amazon know me better than I do? Okay? If you haven't been on your Amazon screen lately, this one's mine. It says I like things like maybe some glasses. I'm interested in Nerf guns as well as some Hulk gloves. Well, yeah, that's true because I have a 9-year-old. And so as I start to see on Amazon, I'm like, oh my God, thank you, Amazon. I do need these things. I really appreciate that you're looking out for my best interests. Okay? And this is true in a lot of places that we see, whether you're on Netflix, that's populating your list. Whether you are on the App Store, it populates your list based on your previous engagements. Same thing with iTunes. They're using predictive analytics to be able to say, based on your previous purchases or engagement with us, this is what we think you need, okay? And I share this because this, friends, is artificial intelligence. So when people say like, oh, AI, it's like way down in the future. Nope. This is it, okay? And the thing that's important to note is I have a 9-year-old right now. He expects this. He jumps on the different apps that he has access to, and he expects that it meets him where he is and provides him opportunities that are specific to what he wants. Those kids cannot continue in our traditional classroom of a one-size-fits-all. We will lose them. Okay, so in the same way, you appreciate that Amazon knows you need a Nerf gun, okay? You need to start thinking about how are we doing this in technology to better service our kids, meet them where they are, and take them where they need to go. So I leave you with your tweet challenge in regards to being able to respond if you want to send a teacher leader to USET. Really appreciate your time. For what it's worth, any of you who are like, she went way too fast. Last time I gave this, I went like 30 minutes over. So I was trying to be thoughtful this time, and instead of deleting slides, I was like, nope, I'm going to just do it that much faster. So thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it. And I don't want to keep you between you and lunch, so I'll turn it back over.
So Sarah is like my favorite. I'm like, I love every time she's here. I love every time we get to work together. And as you can see, she like has a lot of passion, a lot of energy, and also love that she helps us move our technology forward as we do things. In fact, for at least the math people, you may realize that this is the first time in my 14 years of attending state math coordinator meetings that you didn't have a colored folder with the word SMECC on it and the date. And I don't know whether we were like, love you, Sarah, for that, or if you're like, I was really looking forward to my 23rd folder, but but we appreciate her very much and love all the work that she and her team do. With that being said, speaking of technology and loving technology, we have lunch and we're very excited. And I'm going to say we have lunch for every single person who registered on Midas. And then I think we also have a few more lunches, but I am going to say if you registered on Midas, you for sure have a lunch. And we have quite a few. I actually haven't counted that we have 65 lunches, but I think we're really close to the same number of people. So I'm going to say this, if you registered, you have a 5-minute head start, and then everybody else gets to go get their lunch. And then there's also the sharing everything. We are going to come back at 12:30 and really have exciting, wonderful, hot topics and things for us to do this afternoon. But where Sarah didn't want to keep you from your lunch, we won't either. So there's lunch. Go have it. It's going to be great at 12:30. We have some more fun, exciting things to do. If you're online, please know that when we come back and do the hot topics, it's going to be small group conversations. So this is the end of our online meeting. So thank you so much for being online today. Thank you.
Online world, I'm talking to you now. We are actually going to cut the feed right now. After lunch, what we have planned are some hot topic discussions that will be near impossible for you to participate in anyway. So please stay, if you're interested in those, please stay online and kind of get to the ones that you're interested in participating in, those specific topics themselves, and look for the notes that are happening there. And thank you so much. If you have questions, use that as well. We'll try to address them as they come. Thanks.